that suppression is the means by which the gun control objectives that this legislation seeks to obtain is accomplished. And that's expressed in the testimony of Dr. Webster in the book that Johns Hopkins has published with him. And I'd like to draw your attention to this because this matters as a legal matter. On page 118 of the Johns Hopkins book, you will find this passage, that the purpose of this, to achieve the gun control, may suppress gun ownership and thus reduce opportunities of criminals to find individuals who have guns. A legislative objective to suppress gun ownership is constitutionally impermissible. The legislature may not, the state may not, seek to suppress, license, or burden the exercise of a fundamental constitutional right simply to address those who break the laws. You cannot license and tax the exercise of a constitutional right. That has been true for decades since the Supreme Court decided the Murdoch case. I have submitted to the committee, and I apologize for the length, a 19-page, single-space legal brief in which all this is laid out. And I ask you to read it if you can. I know it's full of legal jargon, but the case. This suppression of the right we see most acutely here in the licensing provisions. And what it does is burden the right of everybody, the law-abiding citizen, to purchase a gun by imposing multiple hoops of expense and delay. The expense is substantial. You heard John here say it's roughly $400 or more. There's no case that I have found that sustains a license fee of that amount as a condition to an exercise of a fundamental constitutional right. The Supreme Court held in Murdoch that the fee can only be nominal. And it matters not a bit that the state is only putting $25 or $100 in their own pockets. The fees that the individual has to pay are much more, and that is because the state mandated requirement. So you don't look at what you're going to put in your pocket, you're going to look what the individual has to pay. But more importantly than just the cost, you have, by virtue of the training requirements, imposed enormous burden, and it's unprecedented. Even in the states like New Jersey or California or elsewhere that require a higher licensing of gun purchasers, nobody requires live fire. And there's a reason for that. Not even the District of Columbia, by the way, required live fire, and that's one of the most restrictive jurisdictions in the country. They can't require it because it can't be met as a practical matter. It stands as a complete obstacle. You've heard John testify, we don't have the trainers. We don't have the ranges. I have tons of training. This bill probably won't affect me in the slightest. But for those who seek to buy a handgun for the first time for self-protection in the home, well, they're out of luck because there's no way they're going to get training at any time in a timely manner. We heard testimony this morning that the person who defended his home with his handgun and killed an intruder was perfectly within his rights. But that same person, if he doesn't already have a handgun, if he wishes to acquire, is out of luck because he's no way he's going to be able to satisfy all these with a timely manner to accomplish this. In my brief, you'll see a discussion there that where the state seeks to regulate, they must at least leave an alternative avenue. But what the state proposes to do here is an absolute ban on the right to purchase. And there's no doubt about it or any dispute that there's a constitutional right to purchase. Heller established that, McDonnell reinforced it, and made it applicable to the state. You cannot regard the Second Amendment as the black sheep, somehow a constitutional amendment doesn't really count. The Supreme Court rejected that decisively in McDonnell. So if this legislation is going to be enacted, it seems to me that you ought to enact legislation that will survive judicial review in the federal courts, where you're not going to be able to work on the basis of supposition or anecdote. You're going to have real data. And in my brief, I list the cases, and it's beyond dispute, under either intermediate or strict scrutiny, you're going to have real data. You don't have it here. It's going to fail. Why are you enacting or seeking to enact legislation that will be immediately challenged? And I assure you it will be. That's not responsible lawmaking. Now, I understand that a lot of people don't like firearms. I like firearms, and I've used them all my life. My children use firearms. I teach them how to do it. I keep those firearms safe. But and everybody abhors gun violence. There's nobody here that hates what happens in Newtown more than I do. But you still have to deal with the facts. You still can't suppress a constitutional right simply because we're all horrified. I thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Richard Cushman. I'm the Vice President of Governmental Affairs of the Maryland State Rifle and Pistol Association. As we consider this bill, I first ask if you would step out of your role as a delegate of your individual district, as well as your personal feelings about whether you do like firearms or don't like firearms. Instead, remember that the actions you take in this bill are going to affect all the citizens in Maryland, and I implore you to use logic rather than emotion in making your decisions, and to look at the facts rather than hypothetical projections as you consider this bill. You've already heard from my colleagues about a number of the technical issues on House Bill 294. I'd like to spend a little time giving you some background about how the AR-15 has become one of the most popular rifles in the United States and in Maryland. Much of the popularity comes from its origins. The American public has always gravitated toward firearms that our police and military have used. There's an array of potential reasons for this, but one of the most important is that the rifles and handguns our military and police use have been proven firearms that have both durability and reliability. Few individual citizens have either the capability or the resources to thoroughly test a large number of firearms to find those firearms that are both have a high level of performance. I shoot rifles competitively in my spare time, both when I was an active duty Army officer and when I retired and joined the Maryland State Rifle Team. By way of qualifications, I'm a distinguished rifleman, a distinguished pistol shot. I've qualified for the President's 100. I hold a high master classification with the NRA in all the high centerfire rifle competition disciplines. I won the Wimbledon Cup in 2010 at the National Long Range Rifle Championships, which is one of the second oldest award given for 1,000-yard shooting. And I've won the Maryland State Service Rifle Championship 4 times. I say this not to tout myself, but to show my expertise in talking to you about the AR-15 and the evolution of rifles over time. Back in 1903, the federal government established the national matches. These were initially held in New Jersey and then moved later to Camp Perry, Ohio. The national match course of fire has varied over the years, but today it consists of firing at 200 yards from a standing position, 200 yards from a sitting position, 300 yards from a prone position, and at 600 yards from a prone position as well. So you see, an accurate rifle is needed to be successful in this type of competition. As an aside, the Maryland State Rifle Team won the Soldier of Marathon Trophy both in 1976 and 1979. This trophy is awarded to the highest scoring civilian team at the national championships. All of this competition I'm talking about takes place with what's called a service rifle. And a service rifle is a rifle that on the external looks a lot like the military rifle, but on the inside has been modified to provide greater accuracy and durability. This is a picture of the M1A, which was the civilian equivalent of the M14 rifle, which was used when the Maryland team won those trophies. Up until 2004, the Director of Civilian Marksmanship actually issued the state team M14 rifles. They've been modified so they could not be used in full automatic modes, but these were true M14s, and we use these in national match competition. This was an example, as I said, of the M1A, which is a civilian equivalent of that. In